NFL Week 1 finally upon us. Nick Whalen, John McKechnie here, talking you through some NFL Week 1 bets that we like. We'll talk about a handful of the big games this week. There are plenty of those. We'll talk about some player props that we like as well. John, good to be back doing this with you again this season. Tight board this week, right? This is a tough Week 1. I read earlier this week that we have more close spreads, those being 4 points or fewer, in any Week 1 since 2010, which makes me feel a little bit better as I've been assessing the board over the last few weeks. You know, it's hard to find spots that you really like, and I think a lot of handicappers, around the NFL are feeling that way as Week 1 approaches.
I know, and there's been line movement. These odds get posted the night that the schedule comes out. And, there's doldrums here and there where there's not a lot of movement, but then the training camp unfolds. We see some job battles take shape. Key injuries, of course, like JJ McCarthy's, even though, initially the Giants were favored in that game, or some places it was a pick 'em, and now the Vikings are one of the two road favorites this week. And a lot of movement like through the key numbers or like right up to them, like where like the Raiders, I liked them at 3.5. Now it's right at 3, and it's like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you like the squeeze is like already on, and it's brutal. And I was actually talking to our guy Brandon Kravitz Thursday afternoon, and he said that for a brief moment in time at Hard Rock, like literally during the segment that we were doing, the Rams went up to plus 4.5, and then just immediately went back down to plus 3.5. So there's, this is going to be a tough one for everybody, and Week 1 they're really putting our feet to the fire.
Hey, we wouldn't have it any other way. I'll tell you that. And part of it is, when we get these 4 marquee primetime games, right? Obviously, we had Thursday night football, we get Packers Eagles, we get Rams Lions, we get Jets 49ers. Those are 8 of the maybe 12 best teams in the NFL. Could be the 12 best teams this season. When you have 8 good teams playing against each other, I mean that's going to naturally eliminate some of those more lopsided games.
Yeah, a lot of good on good this week, and therefore, we're not seeing the Niners get the worst team in the NFC at home to start their season. Like they get the Jets on Monday Night Football, and it's going to be intense. Or the Rams and Lions. How about a rematch of a playoff game from a year ago? How about a rematch of the AFC Championship game? So yeah, like you said, that really does kind of soak up a lot of projected playoff teams going up against each other.
All right, so we won't have time to hit on every single game, but we'll try to get to as many as we can. Give me one of your favorite bets so far this week, one of your favorite sides.
So I've been in on the Titans, and I see that currently at DraftKings, it's 3.5. I believe at some places you can still get it up to 4.5. Yep. Fanduel still has it at 4.5, and that obviously I prefer that. But this has been a game that I've circled pretty much all summer, and I've noticed that it really, until this week, it hadn't moved at all. Everything else had kind of like danced around a half point at the very least. But I always felt like that was a bit of an over optimistic look at the Bears. And to be clear, I like the Bears a lot this year. I think that they're an 8-9 win team, which is not like a massive improvement from last year record wise, but it's going to look so much better with the Bears. They're going to have an offense, or at least we expect them to. You have a quarterback that can actually get DJ Moore the ball. You have Rome Odunze coming in, and of course the big difference maker is going to be Caleb Williams. But this is his first game, and believe me, I'm as big of a Caleb Williams guy as you're going to find. But I do wonder if there's going to be an adjustment period to his style of play. I think the big knock on him coming out of USC and Oklahoma even was a little bit too reliant on the improvisation. And I think when you're going up against a Titans front, especially headlined by Jeffrey Simmons, it's just not one that you can really get away with a lot of, I'm just going to let this play break down. I'm going to run around, 30 yards behind the line of scrimmage and find somebody. I think Caleb Williams is going to have to be really decisive in this game to eliminate those type of mistakes and really open up some, kind of drive killing sacks or even potentially turnovers. And I think on the other side, I know the Titans are kind of projected to be the last team in the AFC South. I think everyone believes in a step forward from the Jaguars after a bit of a disappointment last year. I think everyone thinks that, CJ Stroud, what he did as a rookie, how can it not get even better this year? Shane Steichen's doing a great job in Indianapolis. So that kind of leaves this Titans team, no Mike Vrabel in a lurch. I tend to be a bit of a believer in Will Levis, though, and I think that the combo of DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley gives him a decent amount of firepower to work with. I think he's a gamer. I think he's got a great arm, and I think that he's going to keep this one close. So, again, I advise jumping on this early because, that's a bit of a signal. If DraftKings is already moving it down to 3.5, like other books might follow. So I could see this being consensus 3.5 by the time that the kickoff happens. So I would get this in now, but if you can get it at 4 or 4.5 or even 4, I think that's the way that I'm leaning right now.
Yeah, a lot of good points by you. I'm tailing you on that one. I don't know if it's going to make the Circa Million entry. We will see. It locked at 3.5 at Circa on Thursday afternoon. So some big decisions to make. Don't tend to play the early week games. Usually like to save it for the Sunday and the Monday slate. But that one will be in consideration. I'm with you on Tennessee. I do wonder, though, what if we don't see DeAndre Hopkins on Sunday? Another limited practice on Thursday. He's been obviously limited since July with that knee injury. Does that change things for you if it's basically just Will Levis, Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, and Calvin Ridley? Like, how big of a difference maker is DeAndre Hopkins? And then perhaps what might offset that is, Keenan Allen still banged up for Chicago.
Yes, pizza-related injury, I'm guessing on Allen's side. But when it comes to the Hopkins detail, it's important because it's a pretty paper-thin group of pass catchers that they have. It's top-heavy, right? Like if you don't have Hopkins, that you're moving like a big piece of that. You don't really identify anyone further down that depth chart that's like, okay, you step in, it's 80-90% of that expected production. Like it just doesn't work that way. So therein lies the potential for a huge game for Calvin Ridley. And, he's obviously going to be matched up probably with Jalen Johnson, depending on how the Bears want to do their individual matchups. So I'm at this point in time, I'm not going to overcorrect if Hopkins is out. It definitely makes me feel less confident, but I'm still with the Titans at this number if he's out.
Two more quick things on this game. One, we got a great trend from the Action Network. Caleb Williams, as you may know, John, he's the number 1 overall pick. He will be starting in week 1 of his draft year. The previous 18 quarterbacks who've been in that spot. So number 1 overall picks to start week 1 of their true rookie season. 3-14-1 straight up, 5-12-1 against the spread in that week 1 game. And, this is a unique situation for Caleb Williams. He's walking into the complete opposite of what Bryce Young walked into in Carolina. I've been saying all summer, this is the best situation we've seen a rookie quarterback walk into in a very long time, possibly ever. So, take that trend for what it's worth, but typically a spot where a rookie quarterback would struggle. Bears are, of course, at home, though, unlike a couple other rookie quarterbacks we'll discuss later in the show. The other thing I'll say on this game, if you don't love the spread, maybe you don't love the total, which is sitting at 44.5 right now, there is a prop in this game that I really like. That is Tony Pollard over 10.5 receiving yards, -110 right now at DraftKings. We know it's going to be, at least based on what the Titans are telling us, a 50-50 split between Pollard and Spears. I don't really care. I think we see both of them. I at least, that's what we have to work with. They're telling us it's 50-50. We have to believe that for now. We'll see how that changes throughout the year. I think this is a smash spot for Tony Pollard to hit the over on this prop. Chicago, good running defense last year. Terrible in terms of limiting running backs catching the ball out of the backfield. They allowed over 1,000 yards to running backs, over 8 yards per reception to running backs last year. No other team even allowed 800 receiving yards to running backs last season. So if there is a hole in that Bears defense, it has been, stopping backs out of the backfield. And, I'm a little bit more tepid on Will Levis than you are. I think there might be some checkdowns, maybe a little more cautious to begin this game. Tony Pollard gets 2 receptions out of the backfield. I think he tops 10.5 yards. So that's one prop that I'll be keeping an eye on this weekend. John, I'm going to pitch you on the Seattle Seahawks. And I know we have differing opinions on this Seahawks team. We've been kind of going head-to-head on this for a while. I love the Seahawks this week. I love them at home. They're getting a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, making his first NFL start in week 1. So that same trend applies that we just mentioned with Caleb Williams. He's got to go up to Seattle. It's a true home field advantage. There's some mystery, of course, with the Seahawks. New coaching staff, first time in a long time that Pete Carroll won't be roaming the sidelines, chopping the hell out of his gum. But I'm optimistic, man. I think this is going to be a new look offense. I think they're going to be more aggressive. I don't think they're going to finish last in the NFL in total plays run as they did last season. I expect a big step forward from Jackson Smith and Jigba. So getting this one at 6 right now, that's where it sits. That's where it locked at Circa as well. I'm okay with that. I'd like it a little more, of course, at 5.5, but I think this is a really, really good spot for Seattle to get off on the right foot.
I think I was just a little bit smitten by Bo Nix, and I feel like, he's someone that just has so much football experience under his belt. Like, we still are seeing the dregs of the meme on Twitter where it's like, I really like Bo Nix's chances to win the Heisman this year. He played a lot of college football. It's well known, but I think the small little snapshots that we got of him in the preseason, it kind of screams to me that, Sean Payton, that is, has a quarterback in Denver that I think works with what he views as the best way to operate an offense. And this isn't like a comparison 1-to-1 to Drew Brees or anything of that sort. But I think that Nix has that ability to where he's going to be able to hit the ground running. I think he has some athleticism too. So when plays break down, I think he does have the legs to kind of pick up some extra yardage, keep the chains moving, that type of thing. Denver's defense is obviously going to be tested here. I mean, it's a great group of receivers that Seattle has, and I think probably an underrated backfield. But I think what it comes down to for me is I'm skeptical of Geno Smith. It feels like his 2022 season was the anomaly of all anomalies, and I wonder if it comes crashing down. And now Denver might not be the team to exploit that or make that come to fruition. But at the same time, I am a little bit nervous about Geno Smith being able to replicate anything close to what he did a couple of seasons ago when he really resurrected his career. And therefore, I'm just not sure that I'm trusting the Seahawks to win this one by a touchdown.
Okay, fair enough. Geno Smith, 10-15-1 against the spread as a favorite in his career. As a favorite of more than 4 points, he is 2-7 ATS. So perhaps your Geno Smith concerns are warranted. I just look at a Denver team that, in the last, 3 weeks, allowed 3, in my opinion, pretty key veterans to walk out the door. Tim Patrick, Samaje Perine, Justin Simmons, winding up in Atlanta. It's a Denver team to me that seems kind of resigned to the fact, finally, that they are rebuilding. And I know Sean Payton is not a rebuilding coach. He's going to maximize every player on this roster, including Bo Nix. I watched Bo Nix in the preseason, John. I know he finished the preseason 23 of 30 passing. He was really efficient. A lot of those were short passes. A lot of those came up against second, third teamers for other teams. I think this is a big level up in competition to have to go on the road to Seattle. But good. It's good to have a little dissension here. We'll go head to head on that one. What's your next game?
To your point, Mike McDonald, he dialed up a pretty crazy amorphous defense in Baltimore. So, but the pieces are different in Seattle, of course. But there is a sense to where McDonald can really have something cooked up for Nix that he's never even come close to seeing before. So that's certainly a possibility.
All right, what's the next game you want to hit?
Let's see here. Let's go to the great sheet. I want to go to the game of the week, arguably. No, it is not. I oversold that one. Panthers Saints, though.
Oh.
I think the Saints, I'm kind of picking up what our guy Mario Puig is putting down as far as the Saints potentially being this year's Raiders, where there's essentially a mutiny during the season. It's crazy that Dennis Allen was retained. I don't think that they got markedly better this offseason. And it's not to say that the Panthers got a ton better necessarily themselves, at least on paper, but they made some, kind of interesting additions. I thought the Deontay Johnson signing was a good one. I thought they drafted reasonably well on top of it. They have a lot invested in that offensive line. And I think the Dave Canales factor, I mean, we have 2 examples to point to where he's taken embattled quarterbacks and made something out of them, both in Geno Smith's case and in Baker Mayfield's case. So does that mean that Bryce Young all of a sudden becomes a Pro Bowler? No, but I think that if Bryce Young is ever going to come close to not being like one of the worst busts of all time, I think that this is the situation where it suits him best. Canales can put him in that position. I think that Carolina can run the ball here a little bit on top of it. And I know that Carolina doesn't have a particularly great group of pass rushers with Brian Burns having left this offseason, but you look at that Saints offensive line and, you're not really all that impressed by it. We got a rookie left tackle. I believe it was Ryan Ramczyk that's not going to be playing this season with that injury. So I'm worried about that offensive line holding up in New Orleans. I'm worried about Derek Carr. And I feel like that mystique from the Peyton years where you didn't really want to pick against the Saints in the Dome. I feel like that luster has worn off a little bit. And again, I'm mostly betting the number. I think 4 points, you get that field goal cushion and then some. If this game ends up 20-17, I'm not going to be shocked, in which case, the Panthers end up covering. So I just, it's more of a doubting of the Saints, a disrespect for their home field advantage, especially relative to what it used to be. And I think 4 is a friendly number to be taken here.
Yeah, I mean, road dog in division week 1, that tends to favor the underdog in these situations. I get that. I need to see it with Carolina first. I am happy to buy in on Bryce Young taking a big step forward this season with Dave Canales. I think Bryce Young, the person, to me, he's not. I feel like he's not going to allow himself to be a true bust unless his physical limitations just dictate that, and maybe that will be the case. That guy's going to work hard, and he's going to make sure that there's nothing on his part that causes him to wash out of the NFL in 4 years. So I trust Bryce Young, the player, as far as finding the things that he needs to improve on this season. I think the personnel in that offense is better overall. I think Deontay Johnson is a really nice fit, the kind of receiver that they needed in Carolina. Is he Justin Jefferson? No. Is he going to make that kind of difference? No, of course he's not. But they need that kind of short target hog type of receiver to move this offense along. And say what we will about the offensive line, they've at least tried to invest in it, right? I mean, they've made some changes there. It can't be as bad as it was last season. And I think you look around at the potential week 1 opponents, like I think this is actually a reasonable spot for Carolina. I totally agree with you on the bad vibes with the Saints. I know you can't bet it at most books, but if you could find first coach fired odds on Dennis Allen, pull the trigger, man. I think that he is a lame duck coach walking right now. And I mean, New Orleans is basically, they're just running it back, right? I mean, you got a new offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak, but that's it. I mean, it's essentially the same personnel as last season. And this was just, it was such a boring team. It was a team that kind of knew midseason that it was a sinking ship. At least that's the impression that I got, right? I mean, how many times did you see Alvin Kamara? It's 3rd and 9. He catches the ball along the sideline for 2 yards and you're punting, and he's just looking off into the distance. Like, what did I get myself into? What are we doing here? So until we see a new look, until we see something other than the Derek Carr check down rate offense in New Orleans, I'm willing to tell you on this. I think Carolina could keep this to a field goal. I don't think Carolina wins this game straight up. But I think it's a low scoring game. The total's at 41.5. I mean, this could absolutely be a 20-17 type of score in favor of New Orleans. John, I'm going to sell you on a total that I like, and we can discuss the game as well. Maybe you have a side here, but I'm looking at 42 as the total in Atlanta between the Falcons and the Steelers. I love the under here. I don't trust this Pittsburgh offense to hold up its end of the bargain. If you think it goes over 42, I think the Steelers are going to run the ball. I think they are going to try to control the clock as much as they can. I think if Pittsburgh can win this game 13-10, they're totally fine with that. Russell Wilson's banged up. He's dealing with a calf injury. I don't know that he's going to be at 100%. I think he's going to play on Sunday, but I think it could be something that impacts him. And obviously, Atlanta has the potential with this offense to take a huge step forward to emerge from the doldrums of Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, right? We didn't see Kirk Cousins at all in the preseason. He's still got to gel with Kyle Pitts. He's got to gel with Drake London. We like a lot of individual pieces in Atlanta, but the Steelers defense, I think, is going to be really good this season. Obviously, Pittsburgh's always going to be well coached. They're always staying close against teams that are superior to them talent-wise. I don't think that changes this season. That's what's causing me to give a little pause when you look at the Falcons -3.5. I think the Falcons win this game, but I like the total more than anything. I think both of these offenses probably end up struggling on Sunday. What say you?
I think that the Steelers' offensive struggles here could be enough to get us under, like, almost regardless, right? Because I think sneakily Atlanta has a much improved defense. I think that their signing of Jesse Bates last year, strong, like you said. They brought in Simmons from Denver. They bring in Matthew Judon. We'll see if he's revved up and ready to go. So I think that this defense, and you got a new kind of defensive-minded coach in there as well. I think that there's a chance that the Steelers don't push over 13 points like for their own side in this one. At which point, I feel like the under feels relatively safe because the defense is going to come to play, and Tomlin, of course, has the coaching advantage, and it's going to take a little bit for this Falcons offense to take flight. So I think the under is the right read on this game. As much as I want to just assume that this Falcons offense, at least for my fantasy interest, is just going to crush right out of the gate, it probably is going to take a little bit of time here. So, I could see this one ending where the Falcons win it in an ugly-ish game, like 20-10. I do feel like the Falcons cover here in a really low-scoring game, but I think that's stronger to the under than the spread necessarily.
Falcons jumped from 28th to 7th in defensive EPA overall last season. I think that was something that flew under the radar with all the offensive issues, the quarterback issues, the coaching issues with Arthur Smith, who of course returns to his friendly confines in Atlanta. No word yet, by the way. Is there going to be a pregame ceremony? Are they doing the statue unveiling before the game? Is that going to be at halftime? Not really sure, but no, I think that Falcons defense, it's better than we think. We haven't thought about the Falcons as a defensive team in a while, but that's really what allowed them to stay in a lot of games last year. And I think that unit should be just as good, if not better, with the additions of Simmons and Judon. In a similar vein, John, I want to ask you about the total in Pats Bengals. Sitting at 41, Bengals are 8.5-point favorites right now at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Can we make that same case that we just did? You said Pittsburgh alone could kind of drag this game under. Could New England do the same?
That's a great call. I think with Jacoby Brissett, honestly, it might not be so bad. And I prefer Drake May in the long term, obviously, and I hope he gets his shot there soon. I do believe that he's talented, and I think he's that next guy up in New England. But I think Brissett raises that floor a little bit for this offense. It's definitely not a star-studded offense by any means, but I think that the Bengals defense is fine, but not spectacular. I could see the Patriots finding ways, and if this Bengals offense is a little bit out of sync, if Jamar Chase is on a pitch count or runs the wrong route, this is still a really good Patriots defense to where is a pick six out of the question? Maybe you don't want to bet that necessarily, but I think that
I'll answer your question. It's not out of the question. A pick six is very much on the table for Brissett.
Well, I was saying on Burrow's side as well. I think that if this offense is a little bit clunky in the midst of the chase stuff and runs the wrong route, this was a good Patriots defense last year that was undermined by injuries and again terrible offense. So the terrible offense is still on the table here, no doubt about it. But I think maybe this is a game where you think about the first half under, the New England defense being fresh maybe holds that Bengals offense down just a little bit through the first half. And then the Bengals figure it out. They land enough body blows, and then they start to look like the Bengals in the second half. But maybe they go into halftime and it's only 10-3 in favor of the Bengals. And then we see that offensive explosion in the second half. But then the Patriots don't pull their weight to get us to the over here.
Let's talk Colts Texans, another in-division game. We have Houston as one of only two road favorites joining the Minnesota Vikings in week one. Texans are 3-point favorites right now at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Totals all the way up at 48.5. Where do you lean on this one?
So I wouldn't have thought I liked Indianapolis, and I think this one opened at Texans -1.5, but this is one of those ones that have really moved a decent bit over the summer and especially over these last couple of weeks. So I think almost out of necessity, it was just Texans -1 to open. I think Indianapolis keeps it close, and I think that just this feels very public. It feels almost too obvious that the Texans, the way that they surprised everyone last year, the way that they have C.J. Stroud, they add Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins taking another step forward. They bring Joe Mixon in so they don't have to lean on the mixture of Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary anymore. They have theoretically their bell cow back. The defense continues to improve. You got D'Amico Ryans calling the shots over there. It all makes too much sense, I think, for the Texans, and therefore sometimes the things that make all the sense in the world don't really add up on the field on Sundays when it comes to gambling. So I think just out of necessity here with the sheer momentum of the public pushing this number even further in the Texans' direction, I'm going to cut against the grain. And again, it's a divisional home underdog. Give me Indianapolis.
Since 2010, divisional home dogs 22-7 against the number in week one, 9-2 against the spread since 2018, 17-4 against the spread since 2012. So a spot to think about, certainly for the Indianapolis Colts. That, of course, applies to Carolina as well. And we could talk about Vegas and the Chargers being a spot like that as well. But So what if the number's 2.5? Because that's where it locked at the Circa Sportsbook for the Circa Million contest. Does that change your opinion? Do you need to get to 3?
I guess so. Yeah, like when you're talking about the key number like that, so field goal is the difference. I guess I can't totally flip flop at all. Like I know that I just said how tempting the 2.5 was relative to the 3, but I'm going to stick to what got me here, and
Okay.
I'm just going to say Indianapolis, finds a way to stay within 2.5 and maybe even win this game, and what kind of ends up being one of the stunners of Week 1.
Does it change your opinion at all if I told you that the Indianapolis Colts have not won a Week 1 game straight up, home, away, doesn't matter, since 2013? They've started 0-1 every single year since 2013. What do you do with a trend like that? It's almost beyond a trend, but they're not just gonna lose Week 1 in perpetuity, right?
Right, and it's staggering, but I feel like whereas that they had some head scratchers along the way there. I think that Steichen, like there's less nonsense that happens with Indianapolis now than it used to be. This won't be Anthony Richardson's first career start. This is obviously his first start back, and he may not have looked particularly sharp in the preseason, but I'm still a believer in his. And I think that, this is a Indianapolis defense that's pretty stout, especially up front. So I think that, that Week 1 trend, I'm going to block it out of my mind the same way that I'm blocking out the Caleb Williams one, because it's like, yes, he's technically the number 1 overall pick, but he plays for the team that had the number 9 pick and then just happened to have Carolina give them the worst trade of all time.
All right, I want to hit 2 more games rapid fire, and then we'll be out of here. Cardinals, Bills. We have the Bills as 6.5-point favorites over Arizona. Bills are at home. I have some lingering suspicions about the Buffalo Bills, and I'm invested in their under win total this season. Wouldn't be shocked if this team ended up missing the playoffs. I know a lot of the narrative is, well, they have Josh Allen. That's not possible, right? And I get that to some degree. I've comped him to like Nikola Jokic in the NBA, where it's like if you have Jokic on the roster and you surround him with even like average talent, you're going to be okay. You're going to find your way to like 47, 48 wins. And maybe that's the case for the Buffalo Bills, but a lot of change in that offense, a lot of turnover at wide receiver specifically. You're asking Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir to step in as likely your 1-2 to begin the year. Those guys have 49 career NFL catches. I know Shakir looked great down the stretch last season, but still want to see it. You lose Matt Milano from this defense. I think that it just really can't be overstated how important losing him specifically is. And I know they've had a ton of injuries on defense, and for the most part, they've been able to survive it over the last couple of seasons. But Milano is just brutal. And to, for this to happen a couple of weeks ago and not, really have a ton of time to prepare for it, I wouldn't be shocked here if the Bills get tripped up. You remember last year, they were in that huge spot against the New York Jets. Rodgers goes down on third, fourth play from scrimmage, and the Bills lose that game straight up to Zach Wilson. And I know that was weird. It was in New York. There's all this pageantry. They won't have that this time around. I'm not saying Arizona wins this game straight up, but 6.5 is a little too much for me. I think Arizona has the firepower to hang around here, at least offensively. I worry about the Cardinals on defense, but I also worry about, what level the Bills offense is going to be operating at, specifically that passing game in Week 1.
I absolutely am in the long term when it comes to Buffalo. I totally echo those sentiments. I was nervous about the Bills last year when they still had Stephon Diggs and, a bunch more pieces in that offense that they no longer have. Mm-hmm. But I think that this has just gone in a direction where now we're under a touchdown. Now we're under 7. And I think the Bills can. That's what keeps me on the Bills here. Like when it was 7.5, it's like, no, the Cardinals are like a cheeky underdog to take it in this particular spot. They can, that's a friendly number, and we like their offense and everything. But I think now that it's 6.5, I'm going to hold my nose and back the Bills in this spot. I think that I will be betting against the Bills a fair amount this season, and I'm going to be betting on the Cardinals a fair amount this season. I'm very optimistic about the direction that they're going in. I think that they get out of the basement in the NFC West, but the Milano injury, especially when you have, his matchup theoretically being on Trey McBride, who's the engine of that offense last year. Like McBride could be, this huge difference maker in this game. So I definitely am going to be interested in some McBride props, but I think over the course of 60 minutes, the Bills find a way to get this done by a touchdown or more.
All right, I know I'm kind of jumping you with this, but what's your gut feeling on Marvin Harrison Jr. receiving prop 60.5 yards?
60.5. I'm going to go under. It's his first game. I think that it's a little bit more of the McBride and James Conner show to start the season there.
All right. Last game I want to hit, John. Jags Dolphins down in Miami. Miami, a 3.5-point home favorite. Total all the way up at 49. I've gone back and forth here. You know I tend to be a Jaguars pessimist, especially early in the season. Miami started each of the last 2 years 3-0 straight up. They are 3-0 against the spread at home in the month of September under Mike McDaniel. I always have this like kind of sneaking feeling that McDaniel just spends the entire offseason, ready to unload this bag of tricks on whatever poor defense faces the Dolphins in week one. And unfortunately, that's the Jaguars this year. But there are a lot of injuries to keep an eye on the Miami side. I mean, Jalen Ramsey all of a sudden might not play on Sunday. Their offensive line is banged up. They have a couple of guards on IR. Their center's banged up. Players all over the defense. They actually got some good news on Jalen Phillips, who said he's going to play on Sunday, but still trying to replace Christian Wilkins. Does this game live up to the shootout that on paper it feels like it should be?
I think it very well may. The Dolphins offense is going to hold up their end of the bargain, and it looks like the Dolphins defense, like even if Jalen Phillips is back, is he going to look like Jalen Phillips? You're just not completely sure. I think that this Jags offense, despite losing Calvin Ridley this offseason, made some, nice additions. I like Gabe Davis's game. I think that he was, a little bit misused in Buffalo. I'm not sure that he really is that guy from that AFC Championship game, but he's a nice addition there. I think Brian Thomas is someone that can really stress the defense deep as well. And boy, on that Dolphins side, with the offensive line injuries, that's pretty concerning there. I'm still optimistic that the Dolphins are going to find a way to score well into the 20s in this game. But I think the Jags keep pace. If you can get the hook on it, what did it close at circa? Is it 3 or 3.5?
At circa, it is 3.5.
I think I like the Jags here.
Jags going down to Miami, covering that 3.5. Yeah, the hook is important here. No question about that. I think I like the over 49 more than anything. It's really hard for me to picture Miami getting shut down to any degree early in the season. I just when Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are fully healthy, not to mention Devon Achane, you always worry about what that's going to look like week 10, week 12 of the season when they're at Buffalo in late November. But I think we get a track meet. I'm with you on that. I still side with Miami here, even at 3.5. I can't quite get there. I do think Jacksonville has the firepower to hang in. I think this could be a 34-31 type of game. That wouldn't shock me. I think Miami gets to 30. The question is, could Jacksonville get there as well? Could Trevor Lawrence limit mistakes? How much pressure is Trevor Lawrence going to be under, without Christian Wilkins and with some of those injuries for Miami? If Miami was fully healthy, I will say that I would feel very confident in Dolphins minus 3.5. But a couple of those key injuries giving me a little bit of pause.